It was a mentor that I had when I lived in Japan, and I will never forget what he told me. He said, Jason, be ultimately and relentlessly commercial. I've always been a part of the supply chain broader organization. I started in retail, honestly, in stores, and I think that that is the best place to start. Managing stores, really, if you're a supply chain professional, the outcome of what you do lands in front of the consumer. Then I went into distribution and logistics, and then I moved into merchandising, demand planning, allocation, in other companies. I call it the value chain, honestly, because it isn't just about the supply. I think seeing both the end-to-end value chain in my experience has been quite invaluable to where I am today. I learned a lot from automotive companies. I learned a lot from makeup companies. I learned a lot from pharmaceutical companies. So what I realized is that we're all facing some of the same challenges, and we offer some of the same solutions and just scaling them in a slightly different way, thinking about them pretty differently. I think collaboration is a word that I've redefined here, honestly. I reimagined. What does it mean to create a collaboration across like-minded and like-missioned companies? And really thinking about how do we harness the power of the collective versus trying to get to the place singularly by ourselves as a competitive advantage. And really sharing knowledge, really educating ourselves in the industry goings on and happenings, keeping us current to what's happening in the landscape, in a very volatile landscape, quite honestly. And then really just being with your peers, getting out of the bubble, I call it a bit, just to connect with your peers and to really strategize and vision and think about what the future will hold, and really putting supply chain pretty much at the center of the customer wheel, if you will. You know, it's interesting. What's old is new. Before there was social media and TikTok and all of those kinds of things, I think the most defining moment for me in the value chain of supply chain and fulfillment has been in the mid-1990s. I worked for a company called The Gap, and I remember being a planner in the women's division when a really, really famous actress wore one of our T-shirts to an Oscars opening premiere. After that went viral, at that time, there was no such thing as TikTok back then, but that went viral and, tripled, quadrupled the units, millions and millions of units we had to chase. And that was done in an environment that was not in a digital environment. So there were viral moments even then, and now you look at something today, a defining moment has been really the emergence of something like TikTok and YouTube, and really how the consumer will what they want. It is no longer about what we want them to buy. They will determine what they will purchase from you. And I think that synergy between the consumer really being the driver of the supply chain, I think, has never really changed. I just think it's coming in different forms. I think for me, it's about the supply chain really keeping up with the modernized ways of communicating with the consumer and responding to that, whereas the response has always been there. I just think we have to get faster at doing it. I would say there's been individuals along the way, but I would have to say, my time in Asia, I spent 16 years in Asia, which is where I really cut my teeth in understanding the intersection of the commercial side of the business with the operation side of the business. And it took me a few, let's call it, years to figure out what commercial meant to me. But no matter what part of the organization that I'm in, no matter what discipline I'm leading and teams that I'm leading, being relentlessly commercial, hunting for growth is something that I bring to the conversation all the time. And I think it's important because it not only puts the consumer first at the center of that, but it also, I think, generates to the bottom line and the top line. So for me, commerciality is really about being consumer-centric, but also being business-minded. So that was some really good advice that I learned pretty early on in my career as a leader that has really stuck with me throughout the last couple of years. I would give myself the advice to be more curious and to educate yourself outside of a 4-year university or an MBA or what have you. I would just tell myself today even, educate yourself on what's going on in the marketplace with all the different topics of sustainability, circularity, et cetera, social media engagement. Seek opportunities to, be curious about what's happening in your space, and it's all accessible to us, whereas in the past it may not have been as accessible. So I just say be curious and really ask questions and connect with people who are experts in the field that you may not be in.